So who is Craig Miller? No, it's not Rusty Miller's father. Craig Miller was the first director of fan relations for Lucasfilm from 1976 to 1980. During this time, he oversaw the creation of the official Star Wars fan club and was the editor and a writer for 2 years for the fan club magazine, Panther Tracks. Over his short time at Lucasfilm, he really helped in promoting Star Wars. My videos have often talked about the promotion leading up to Star Wars and even the sequels. And whenever I'm doing research, Craig Miller's name comes up a lot. He's the mastermind behind the 1-800 numbers you could call in, where you could hear Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, and the rest give you updates on the upcoming release of Empire Strikes Back. If you don't know about that, check out my video on it. 2 of my most recent videos, the plans for Boba Fett, all lead back to Craig Miller. He got inside information from Lucas himself about what Lucas planned for Boba Fett. And my other video was about how Greg Miller worked with Starlog magazine to release or leak some rumored information about Empire Strikes Back. Check both of those videos out also. As you can see, Craig Miller was a driving force in promoting the Star Wars movies. And I haven't even brought up how he produced the Underoos commercial that, yes, I did a video on that also. I was able to do an interview with Craig Miller so we can find out more about some of these topics that I've covered before, some new topics I haven't yet, some topics I haven't talked about yet, and just about his time with Lucasfilm. Now, this is going to be an audio-only interview, so unless you're listening to this on the podcast, sorry, but I think you'll still enjoy this interview the same. So now sit back and listen to my interview with the first director of fans relations for Lucasfilm, Craig Miller. Tell me, what was your title at Lucasfilm?
My title was Director of Fan Relations. That was more or less a public oversaw all the stuff related to fans of the movies. But I was a general publicist, a writer, a producer on special projects, and all kinds of things. But Director of Fan Relations was my title.
Was this something new for that time period to have that as somebody to help promote the film in that way?
Oh, absolutely. No, we were the first company to go directly to fans of whatever the movie was about. In this case, science fiction and comics and the whole genre of that type. We were the first company to go out directly to the people who might go see the movie rather than just marketing to the general public. And of course now everyone does it that way, but it was a brand new thing at the time.
Right. So you started, when you started promoting Star Wars, what, probably 76?
1976, yeah. It was actually the idea of Charlie Lippincott, who was the head of marketing for Star Wars. And he brought me in first as a consultant and then eventually full-time on staff.
Okay, and you did the Comic-Con, I guess, in 76, which is a lot different today than it was in 76, I'm sure.
Right, well, yeah, absolutely. In 1976, Charlie did all of the presentations, but I was at the conventions we did them at. The WesterCon in LA, San Diego Comic-Con, and then the World Science Fiction Convention in Kansas City. We did that summer.
I mean, you probably figured the movie would probably be well received, but you had no idea it would turn into what it's turned into.
Well, we were hoping it would be well received. You know, no one knows for sure, and certainly no one had any idea it would turn into what it did. But it was a time, you know, people forget when you look at movies today, where every other movie is either science fiction or superheroes. Back in the 70s, science fiction was not popular. So it was not a foregone conclusion that Star Wars would be successful at all. But we had faith in it.
Did you only do this with Star Wars, or did you work on other movies kind of promoting the same way?
Well, Star Wars was the first movie I worked on. I had just graduated college when I became a consultant on Star Wars. But then I continued in the movie industry. I stayed at Lucasfilm through the release of Empire, and then I became an independent consultant to Jim Henson, Warner Brothers, Disney, Universal, lots of different companies. And I did that for 10 years before I became a writer.
Well, it's kind of off subject here, but people that watch my channel is going to be upset if I don't mention it. You did write for the Real Ghostbusters cartoon, a couple episodes?
I did. I wrote 3 episodes for the Real Ghostbusters, its first season.
Okay, I know some people's going to tell me if I don't mention it. They're going to say something if I don't bring it up.
Yeah, no, I decided after 10 or 12 years as a marketing consultant that I wanted to get into something more creative and directly involved with the making of films and television, and I'd always loved animation. And I had an opportunity to get involved with the Real Ghostbusters, so that's where my writing career started.
What made you in 1980? I mean, the hype of Star Wars was at its peak. Empire just came out, and you walked away. What made you not want to stick around for the release of Jedi, or maybe stay on with Lucasfilm?
Well, if all things were remained the same, I would certainly have stayed on. But George had told me while we were making Empire, actually in post-production on Empire, that he had decided not to make the next trilogy. He was going to do Jedi. We didn't have a title at the time, but he was going to do that movie and stop making them. And I also knew from George that he was shortly going to be closing up the LA offices and moving everybody up to Northern California. Not everybody, but selected people. He was going to move the operation to Northern California. And I didn't particularly want to move north, and especially if it was going to be work on one movie and then have to move back to LA if I wanted to continue working in the movie industry. So I decided, having worked on Star Wars and Empire, that was a good set of credits to move on to start my own consulting company.
Good thing you did. There was a long break after Jedi. You would have probably been looking for something else.
I would have to move back to LA to continue working. So, and I just that was really the reasons I left. It was I wanted to continue working, but I didn't want to relocate twice.
And you were on the set of the at least Empire. Were you on the set of Star Wars also?
No, I wasn't on the set of Star Wars. It was already in production when I came on as a consultant, and I was not brought over to the shoot. But I spent, I made 2 trips over, an aggregate of about 5 weeks on the set of Empire.
Okay, and here's something. I did a video on the 1-800 promotion, and I believe that was your brainchild. You came up with that?
Yeah, I did that. I mean, what we did was back in 1979, answering machines were relatively new, and 800 numbers were kind of new. And I came up with the idea of using an 800 number, 800-521-1980, 521 May 21st, 1980, the date Empire would come out. People could call up and get they'd hear a message from one of the characters in the movie. Luke, Leia, Han, C-3PO, or Darth Vader. And so I wrote all those messages, produced them, and we recorded all of the actors doing their messages. And then starting in the beginning of 1980, we let those messages, we publicized the fact that those messages were out there and people could call up and get some advance information about what would be in the movie.
And it was pretty well received, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was very, very successful. We didn't do any advertising for it. I announced it at a couple of conventions, and Starlog ran a 2 or 3 paragraph box about it being available to call, and it was so popular that within the first couple days of the phone line being open, AT&T, which was the only phone company back then, couldn't process the number of calls coming in, and it completely overwhelmed and shut down the 800 system in the state of Illinois, which is where our phone room was. It's a complicated thing with the fact that it was all mechanical switching back then, but
right.
we had to put the phone lines where the phone number was, and it completely shut it down. And then AT&T came to us and asked us to stop it, and we said we didn't want to stop it. And they said, well, then you have to add more phone lines, you have to cease all advertising, and you have to publicly apologize. And ceasing advertising was easy because we hadn't done any. Adding more phone lines was easy because we just called the company that was operating the phone lines for us and said, add more phone lines, which they did. And the public apology was the best part. AT&T wanted to get, they didn't want to be blamed by their customers for the 800 system having been down for a day, and people not being able to get their business calls in. So they wanted us to take the blame. So we said, sure. And I wrote a press release, which we sent out saying, we're so sorry that there were so many fans of Star Wars who wanted an advance peek at The Empire Strikes Back that it overwhelmed AT&T's equipment. We really apologize for the film being so popular, and we're sorry that they weren't able to do it, but it's all fixed and you can call now.
Probably one of the best apologies.
Yeah, it's one of those don't throw me into the briar patch kind of thing. We were only too happy to do the press release because we got far more publicity from the press release about the shutdown of AT&T than we got from announcing that there was going to be a phone line.
Right.
So that was great in terms of publicity, and lots of people called, lots of people heard it, and you can still hear them. They're now up on YouTube. What happened was a few years ago, I found the master tape, not really the master tape, but my cassette copy of all of the recordings in a part of my, back in my files, and I had them digitized, and I put them up on my Facebook page, and they went viral. All my friends copied them, and their friends copied them, and soon every website out there that covered the media, and especially genre, had picked them up. Some of them even credited me, and Entertainment Weekly picked them up and wrote an article about it and interviewed me for it. And so they were all over, and people have downloaded them and put them up on YouTube, so you can hear all the messages now.
Yeah, I'm guilty. I got it on my YouTube page. I actually did a video where I kind of listened and reacted to it, but you got a lot of outtakes too, so that was really good that you held on to that stuff.
Yeah, eventually, actually my old assistant, Mark Marshall, found a recording of 3 outtake reels from the recording session. Carrie, I think Mark, and James Earl Jones. And so I put those up on my Facebook page, and yeah, those ended up on YouTube as well.
Yeah. Well, did you do that at Harrison Ford's house with him?
Well, Harrison's we recorded at his house. We actually had planned to record everyone when they were looping their dialogue for the movie, but Harrison had already completed his dialogue looping when we had these ready. So everyone else, when they came in to loop their dialogue for the movie, we recorded them for the phone number, for the phone lines. Harrison was done, so I got a sound engineer friend of mine, and we went up to Harrison's house and recorded him.
Okay, well that's good. He would do it. It's good that you were able to get the real actors for each one.
Oh yeah, it was all predicated on actually having them do the dialogue. It was all about those characters, and if the voices aren't right, then doing it over a telephone doesn't work.
Right. Yeah. And I know there's a lot of kids. I was almost 10 at that time, and I know I called it over and over again. I'm sure that's why the phone went down, because even people that called it was calling it over and over again, and then getting their friends to call it over and over again. So I did a video also about the plan of Boba Fett, and I know you talked with Lucas during the production of Empire. I don't know if you have a little bit more to add to that, but he had a whole different plan for Boba Fett until he decided to end the series with Jedi.
Yeah, Boba Fett was originally going to be the main villain in the third movie, which turned into Return of the Jedi. Um, and so he was set up at the end of Empire. He's got Han and Carbonite, and he's gone off with it. And the movie was going to be about chasing him, getting Han, rescuing Han, that sort of thing. But when George decided he wasn't going to make the third trilogy, he was going to end with the third movie, which now we call number 6. He decided he needed to put the plot that he had planned for the third trilogy into Jedi, which is the redemption of Darth Vader and the overcoming of the Emperor. So that's why Boba Fett went from being the main villain to, at the end he's moving Han Solo, and at the beginning of Jedi he gets bumped into and knocked overboard and disposed of quickly, so that they could put the plot of what was going to be the next 3 movies into Jedi.
Right. It helps explain why Boba Fett was so propped up before Empire.
That was it. He was promoted heavily because he was going to be the big villain in that third movie, but it just didn't work out that way for the character. But the character obviously became very popular despite all that.
I also did a video on the rumors or the leaks that were in Starlog magazine, and then it came out that you were behind those leaks. Your name comes up whenever I do a video. It seems like your name comes up every time.
Starlog was the big genre magazine of the time, back when we had magazines. And we worked with them. Those guys were all great. They were very, they wanted to cover the movies. We wanted the publicity. We worked with them. They released stuff. They were very easy to work with. They were very agreeable. We liked working with them. They were good guys. There were a few women there, but it was mostly guys working at Starlog. And so we were happy to do something with them. And I wanted to give them a big break. When I say break, a publicity break. It was the end of 79 before we were doing any big publicity. So we came up with this idea and Starlog thought it was a fun idea to do an article that I think it appeared in the December issue of 79, something like that. At least it came out at the end of 79. It was an article of, here are all the rumors we've heard about what's going to be in The Empire Strikes Back. And the reason it was good for Starlog isn't just that they had an article full of rumors, but we gave them a number of photos. I think it was 3 photos of the battle in the ice cave that had never been released. They were the first photos really released about the film, and they were the first place to run those photos. So they were kind of an exclusive release for Starlog. So they were very happy to get that, and we were very happy to give it to them. And, of course, George is very big on secrecy and no one knowing what's going to be in the movie, so he liked the idea of our doing an article that would help confuse people.
Some of them's kind of tongue-in-cheek, where you can tell maybe Starlog's being a little silly, where, some time travel stuff, it was just really far out there. But then there were some hints of some stuff that actually happened in the film.
Right. Well, in fact, even though it had the name of the editor on it, I wrote the article and came up with all of the rumors, some of which actually were going around, and some of which were true. But I wrote the whole article. And then before it came out, I showed it to George, who thought it was great, but said, it needs more rumors. And I said, but George, I already wrote all the rumors. And he said, well, write more. So we came up with this idea that the article stood as I had originally written it, and then there's a box that goes with the article at the end of it where the Starlog editor says, we approached Craig Miller of Lucasfilm and asked him about these rumors, and they quote me as saying, well, some of them are true and some of them aren't, but I won't tell you which. And by the way, here's a bunch more rumors we've heard about what's in the movie. And so there's another bunch of rumors that I wrote about what's in the movie.
And you just made it up, right? Most of it?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I say, some of them were actual rumors that were going around, but a lot of them were things I just made up sitting at the typewriter, back when we used typewriters. There's a desert planet, there's an ocean planet, there's this, there's that. Some, like I say, some of it was real. Some of it was completely made up. And just to let, people's imaginations go wild. Which of these are really in the movie?
I mean, it's just crazy how many. Like I said, I did a video where I went through each one, and it was time travel, and then I went to a black hole, and then just hanging out with Darth Vader, and Han Solo turned bad. It was like any rumor you could think of.
Yeah, and you could imagine almost any of those things happening. Han Solo would never really turn bad, but you could see him being tempted or seeming to have turned bad or whatever in the movie. Would certainly be a plot you could believe could be written.
I also heard, I did a video on the Underoos, and I heard you produced that commercial.
Underoos, yeah, I was the producer for Lucasfilm on it, and I was one of our two operators.
Oh, okay. I don't know if you've seen that commercial in a while, but it's kind of creepy looking at it now.
Oh, it was. Believe me, it was kind of creepy then. I felt, we were just this side of kiddie porn with these, young kids dancing around in their underwear, and they brought in a choreographer. We shot it here in L.A., but they brought a choreographer in from New York, and, these little kids doing Bob Fosse hip thrusts and stuff. What you actually see on the air is toned down because one of the two young girl actors in the thing wasn't a very good dancer, and they had to keep simplifying the movements for her. But originally it was like, okay, this is really weird.
Yeah, I did a video reacting to that commercial, and it was like, I felt weird watching it.
Yeah, I mean, we did a number of commercials for licensees, and we were not approving the content of them in that sense. We approved the Star Wars-ness, and we provided, R2 and 3PO, Boba Fett, to be in it, but we didn't write them. We didn't say you can do this, you can't do that, unless it violated what we felt the characters should do. But the content for the advertisers was up to them. So we felt it was creepy, but, it was their commercial.
Well, there's really no way to do an underwear kid commercial without it being kind of creepy, I don't think.
Well, probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Did you work with Kenner at all?
A little bit. Jim King, who was the vice president of licensing at Kenner, he was there from the beginning through, I don't know, Jim finally retired, I think, maybe in the early 2000s. But he stayed on through Kenner being owned by Tyco and then it becoming Hasbro. I worked with him some and did a little bit with Kenner. Charlie Lippincott and Mark Pevers made the original deal with Kenner back in '76. But I did do some work with Kenner, but it was more or less limited because the deal was already in place.
Okay, but you didn't work on the commercials or help them?
No, not on any of the commercials. They're they were, their operation for doing toy commercials was pretty much a whole industry that they had built up. They didn't need us for that.
You also did some work on Superman 2?
Yeah, actually the first film I worked on after I left Lucasfilm was Superman 2. I went over, I became a consultant to Warner Brothers. I worked on Superman 2, Altered States, Excalibur, The Hand, a few other movies for Warner's.
Okay, and you wrote you have a Star Wars book. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
My book? Sure, it's called Star Wars Memories. It just came out in November, and it's a much longer book than I'd expected it to be when I started writing it. It's over 100,000 words. It's over well over 400 pages, and it's I call it an anecdotal memoir. It's about the years I worked at Lucasfilm on Star Wars and Empire. It's about getting fandom involved with Star Wars from '76 on. It's about doing those phone lines, doing Sesame Street and Under Roofs. It's about the time I spent at the studio. I talk about a lot of the people who worked on the movies who were important but aren't so well written up. Like, there's books and magazine articles about George, but very little written about, for example, Gary Kurtz. So I talk about him. I talk about Mark Pevers and the licensing, the early licensing. I talk about a lot of the production people who you might not have read much about. I talk about all the convention presentations that we did, the reactions from fans. I talk about the official Star Wars fan club, which I created and oversaw, and I wrote the first 3 years, I think, of Bantha Tracks, the newsletter of the fan club, and talk about all that kind of stuff. There's also 4 interviews, one with George, Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Tony Daniels that I conducted in the 1970s about working on the movies. And I just unearthed those interviews, and we had them transcribed, and they're included in the book as well.
Okay, and where can people get the book? Amazon?
Amazon. The book's available at Amazon. I don't know how many bookstores are carrying it. Bookstores can order it. It's available from Ingram, which is one of the main distributors to bookstores, but anyone can get it through Amazon, both here and internationally. And I'm doing a few conventions where I'm doing signings. Right now, my wife is recovering from a long illness, so I haven't been doing much traveling. I'm staying close to home until she's fully recovered. So I'll be doing more traveling as the year goes on to different parts of the U.S. and anywhere else that invites me to come. But you can get them from me when I'm at a convention, and I'll sign them.
Okay, and what was the title again?
The title is Star Wars Memories, My Time in the Death Star Trenches.
It must have been a real sea change right there when Star Wars was released. I mean, when the mania hit, really put you in full force of getting ready for the next movie.
Oh yeah, I mean it was astonishing. We all thought the movie was good. We all were pretty sure the movie would have enough success. It would certainly break even and hopefully do well enough to do a sequel. No one envisioned the kind of phenomenon that Star Wars turned into. And it certainly gave us a lot of freedom. We still approached Empire Strikes Back not as a sure thing. We did all the marketing you would do for, any movie. Especially sequels. Sequels historically have not fared as well as the original. So we were doing things like, Mark and Kerry and Harrison doing press interviews and the 800 phone line and putting the robots on Sesame Street and all of that stuff to market Empire Strikes Back. And people were much happier to cover Empire than Star Wars, because Empire was after Star Wars came out and everyone wanted to do something about Star Wars. Before Star Wars, it was this weird science fiction movie we're not sure anyone would want to read the articles about. So it was easier to sell Empire in that regard, but we still went out and did a hard sell to get people to see it.
Right. Well, I think that's about all the questions I got for you. I want to thank you for giving me your time to come talk with me. I'm sure I'll be making some videos down the road, and your name will come up again, so I'll probably have to send you some messages to get.
Yeah, and I'm looking. I haven't seen all the ones you've made. I'm going to have to go find them.
Yeah, like I said, I've done Underoos, I've done the 1-800 number, I've done the Starlog, I've done the. It seems like every I did Starlog and the Boba Fett rumor back to back, and I was like, that name's come up twice now.
Well, it seems like you're just doing videos about my careers.
Okay, again, yeah, thanks again, and I hope we can talk again.
I hope so.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. That's my interview with Craig Miller. A big thank you to Craig for talking with me and telling me more about his time with Lucasfilm. Hope you enjoyed that interview, and please thumb up and share the video. The more you share it, the more people see it, and who knows, I can get more people to interview. Anyway, thank you for listening. Thumb up this video, subscribe to the channel, and I think I said all that already. And let me know in the comments below what you thought about this interview, what you think about Craig Miller. Would you have walked away from Lucasfilm? Tell me all that in the comments below. And until the next time, we will talk again.
Thank you, sir, for that unsolicited testimony.